Imagine a legacy so massive it shakes even the strongest hearts. Cher, the goddess of pop, didn't just build a career. She built an empire of music, movies, fashion, and bold reinvention. But behind the glitz and glory lies a shocking truth about the staggering fortune she leaves behind. A fortune so vast it has brought tears, conflict, and heartbreak within her own family. What really happens when one woman's empire outlives her? This is the story that will leave you stunned. Cher's story doesn't start in the glitter of Hollywood or the roar of Las Vegas stages. It begins in a place most stars never talk about: an orphanage. Born in 1946 in El Centro, California, Sherilyn Sarkisian came into a world already cracked. Her father, charming but unreliable, vanished quickly. Her mother, Georgia Holt, was a dreamer with a beautiful voice but no stability. She worked behind counters, married and remarried, searching for permanence but never finding it. When Cher was just 2 years old, Georgia made a choice no mother wants to make. Overwhelmed, she left her daughter in the care of a Catholic orphanage. To adults, it might have looked like necessity. To a toddler, it was abandonment. Cher later described those early memories as shadows of solitude, nights of silence, days of confusion, and the ache of being left behind. Even when she returned to her mother or grandparents, her life was marked by instability. One week she was surviving in dusty rented rooms, the next she was briefly dropped into Beverly Hills by another new stepfather. She grew up feeling invisible. At school she struggled with dyslexia and an undiagnosed learning disorder, but teachers mistook her silence for laziness. Report cards labeled her a failure. Other girls dreamed of dances and dresses. Cher dreamed of rhinestones and spotlights, imagining a stage where she could finally be seen. Poverty followed her everywhere. She once tied rubber bands around the soles of her shoes just to hold them together. An event, they motored her away. Shame burned in her, but so did a strange kind of fire. By 16, that fire became too strong to ignore. She dropped out of school, packed a small suitcase, and boarded a bus to Los Angeles, with nothing but dreams that felt too big for a girl who had come from so little. The city was unforgiving, crowded with people chasing the same impossible future. Yet Cher had something they didn't: a hunger born from years of being overlooked. And then came Sonny Bono. At first, he wasn't her lover or even her partner. He was simply a man who gave her a couch to sleep on when she had nowhere else to go. But soon, that couch turned into collaboration, and collaboration turned into destiny. By 1965, their voices blended together on I Got You Babe, and the world finally noticed the girl who once tied rubber bands around her shoes. The song didn't just launch a career. It pulled Cher out of the shadows of her childhood, giving her the thing she had always craved most: visibility. For the first time, the world couldn't ignore her. Cher's first rise to fame came with Sonny, but as quickly as the spotlight found her, it also turned harsh. By the mid-1970s, the partnership that had once saved her from obscurity was unraveling. The Sonny and Cher Comedy Hour was still a television hit, their banter charming millions every week, but behind the smiles their marriage was collapsing. What looked effortless on screen was filled with silence and distance at home. In 1974, Cher filed for divorce. By 1975, the marriage and the show were over, leaving her with broken trust and almost no money. It was a cruel lesson. She had been the face, the voice, the star, but Sonny had controlled the finances. When she walked away, she was nearly penniless. At just 29, Cher was already twice divorced, a single mother, and staring at the possibility that her career might be finished. But surrender had never been part of her character. She launched her own show, simply called Cher, defying whispers that she could never survive without Sonny. Sequins sparkled, laughter roared, and the show became a hit, reminding the world that she was never just one half of a duo, she was her own force. Still, the road was brutal. Her solo albums in the mid-70s, like Stars and I'd Rather Believe in You, failed to find an audience. Critics dismissed her. The charts grew cold. To survive, she reinvented herself again, stepping into the world of disco when rock and radio seemed to have left her behind. In 1979, she released Take Me Home, a glittering, sensual record that sold over 500,000 copies in the US and went gold. For a brief moment, the world was dancing with her again. Behind the sequins, however, was the same girl who once tied rubber bands around her shoes, clawing her way out of invisibility. But disco faded as quickly as it had risen, and Cher once more found herself searching. In 1980, she even tried fronting a rock band, Black Rose, hoping to strip away the glitter and prove herself as an authentic musician. But the project failed, the record barely sold, and the band dissolved without leaving a mark. For many, it would have been the end. For Cher, it was another pivot. At 36, with her music career at a dead end, she turned to something she had never seriously considered before: acting. To many, it looked like desperation, but Cher threw herself into it with the same intensity she had always carried. In Silkwood, 1983, she disappeared into the role of Dolly Pellicker, a plain, wounded woman living on society's margins. There were no rhinestones, no costumes, no glitter, just raw truth. Critics were stunned. The film earned over $35 million, 0 cents. Cher won a Golden Globe, and for the first time, Hollywood began to take her seriously. This new career opened doors she had never imagined. She followed with powerful roles in Mask, 1985, The Witches of Eastwick, 1987, and Suspect, 1987, each bringing her six-figure paychecks and cementing her credibility. But it was Moonstruck in 1987 that became her true rebirth. As Loretta Castorini, Cher was luminous, funny, vulnerable, ordinary yet unforgettable. The film was a box office triumph, grossing nearly $100 million, 0 cents, worldwide, and Cher lifted the Academy Award for Best Actress in 1988. It was more than victory, it was vindication. She had been written off as a relic, mocked as a novelty, doubted at every turn. And now, she stood at the top of Hollywood, golden statue in hand, proof that she could rise no matter how many times the world tried to bury her. Yet trophies don't pay bills, and Cher knew it. As the applause faded, she faced the same brutal reality she always had. In entertainment, every triumph is temporary. By the late 1980s, she returned to music, carrying the weight of having to prove herself all over again. In 1989, she released Heart of Stone. The album sold over 4 million copies worldwide, driven by the anthem, If I Could Turn Back Time. The video, with Cher in a leather outfit aboard a battleship, was banned by MTV at first, but became unforgettable. It wasn't just a hit song, it was a declaration that she was still here, still powerful, still relevant. The money began to flow again. For the first time, Cher was able to invest in stability. She purchased her Malibu estate, a property that would later be worth tens of millions. To the public, it looked like glamour. To Cher, it was a fortress, a permanent home she had been denied in childhood. But behind the gates, the struggle wasn't over. Her body was beginning to betray her. And then, a secret murder was beginning to betray her. In the early 1990s, Cher battled a chronic illness that left her exhausted, gasping for air, and sometimes unable to walk across a room. Pneumonia weakened her further. Tours were canceled, film roles slipped away, and once again she faced the terrifying possibility of being erased, not by critics this time, but by her own body. Yet even through sickness, she did not stop reinventing. Then came 1998. At 52, when most believed her career was over, Cher released Believe. Critics dismissed it at first, calling the use of auto-tune a gimmick, but the song exploded, selling over 11 million copies worldwide and reshaping the sound of pop forever. Believe wasn't just a song, it was a revolution. The tour that followed grossed more than $100 million, 0 cents. Her voice, transformed by technology, became an anthem of survival for millions. For Cher, it was both triumph and punishment. Friends recall her collapsing backstage, her body swollen and bruised, IV drips keeping her on her feet. Every night she sang through pain, every ovation masking exhaustion. Yet, she carried on, turning scars into spectacle once again. And so, through the 2000s and beyond, Cher reinvented herself once more as the Queen of Las Vegas. Her residencies grossed tens of millions, her farewell tours shattered records, and each time the world thought she was done, she returned stronger, louder, and bolder. The reinventions were never easy. They were born from heartbreak, illness, loss, and fear of being forgotten. But Cher transformed all of it into power. That has always been her gift. When the world tried to erase her, she came back brighter. When her body failed, she pushed through the pain. When love betrayed her, she built her own empire. Reinvention, for Cher, was never just about music or movies or fashion. It was survival. and in turning survival into art, she became something even greater than a star. She became a symbol, proof that no matter how many times you are pushed down, you can rise again, stronger, louder, and unstoppable. For the world, Cher was always larger than life, the sequined goddess, the phoenix of pop, the woman who refused to fade. But inside the walls of her own home, she was simply a mother, struggling with the same fears, flaws, and regrets that fame can never erase. Her legacy as a parent is not a fairy tale of perfection. It is a story of love stretched thin by distance, of bonds broken and mended, of mistakes that left scars, and of resilience that kept those bonds alive. Her first child, Chaz, was born Chastity Bono in 1969, at the height of the Sonny and Cher phenomenon. From the very beginning, Chaz lived under the glare of cameras, paraded on television as part of the family act. To fans, it looked like charm. To Cher, it was a juggling act, balancing the demands of stardom with the fragile needs of a child. She loved deeply, but fame devours time. Bedtime stories were replaced with rehearsals, mornings with press calls, family dinners with flights to the next show. Cher adored her child, yet she couldn't always be present. It is the contradiction every working mother knows, magnified by the merciless glare of the spotlight. When Chaz came out first as gay in the 1990s, Cher's reaction surprised many. Publicly, she embraced him and became an outspoken ally of LGBTQ+ rights. Privately, she admitted it took time to process. She had to confront her own fears and biases, but she chose love over judgment. Later, when Chaz began his transition to live authentically as a man, Cher stumbled again. She confessed openly that she grieved, not because she didn't love her son, but because she struggled to let go of the daughter she thought she knew. "I didn't go through it that easily," she admitted. "It wasn't rejection, it was fear." But love has a way of pushing past fear. With time, Cher emerged not just as a supportive mother, but as a fierce defender of her son, praising his courage and celebrating his happiness. Theirs was not a smooth road, but the end of that journey was stronger than the beginning. Her younger son, Elijah Blue Almond, carried a different kind of wound. Born in 1976, from her stormy marriage to Greg Almond, Elijah inherited both his parents' artistic gifts and their shadows. When he was only 7, Cher sent him to boarding school. For her, it may have been necessity. For him, it felt like exile. Decades later, he spoke of it with a quiet sadness that cut through the glamour. When you go to boarding school at 7 years old, it's kind of hard to feel like you're not being shunned. His words revealed the cost of Cher's empire. While she was conquering stages, he was left with the ache of absence. Elijah grew into a man marked by restlessness and struggle, battling his own demons of addiction and searching for belonging. In interviews, he spoke candidly about the distance between himself and his mother. He described their relationship as a work in progress, a phrase both heavy with hurt and fragile with hope. And yet, beneath the scars, there was always love. "She's really talented. She's gorgeous. I mean, she's Cher. What's not to love?" he once said, a sentence that carried both admiration and ache. It was a reminder that even fractured love can endure, that the bond between mother and son, though imperfect, never fully breaks. Cher's motherhood has never been about glossy magazine covers or picture-perfect family portraits. It has been messy, painful, and raw. She has admitted her mistakes, confessed her struggles, and owned her flaws. She has also shown something more important: that love is not about being perfect, but about refusing to give up. With Chaz, she learned to let love grow into something new. With Elijah, she learned that love can survive distance and disappointment. Her legacy as a mother is not the kind that fills fairy tales, but it is real, and in that reality lies its strength. She showed that even someone as powerful, as iconic, as seemingly untouchable as Cher is still human. Still a mother who worries, who stumbles, who hurts, and who hopes. And maybe that is what makes her story resonate even more. Because in the end, Cher's greatest empire isn't the Malibu mansion or the millions of records sold. It isn't the Oscar on her shelf or the fleets of cars in her garage. It's the resilience of her family bonds, tested again and again, but still standing. It's the way she walked alongside her children, even when the road was broken. It's the way she chose to grow when it would have been easier to retreat. That is the imperfect legacy of Cher as a mother. Not flawless love, but enduring love. Not constant presence, but relentless perseverance. And perhaps that is more powerful than any perfection could ever be. Cher's life has always been a story of extremes. Poverty and palaces. Silence and applause. Heartbreak and triumph. To the world, she is the goddess of reinvention, the voice that has outlived generations of trends, the sequined silhouette who somehow refuses to fade, even as decades pass. But behind the glitter, the cars, the mansions, and the staggering fortune, there is a deeper truth. The empire she built is not only about money. The meaning she leaves behind is far greater than wealth. Her fortune, as the headlines love to remind us, is vast. More than $360 million 0 cents by the latest estimates. She earned it not in one sweep of luck, but piece by piece, night by night, show by show. Every dollar was born of risk, resilience, and pain. The Las Vegas residencies that earned her more than $250 million 0 cents were not effortless glamour. They were grueling battles. She performed with knees so swollen she needed injections backstage just to walk on stage. She sang with lungs weakened by illness, her sequins hiding bruises that no one in the crowd could see. Her fortune is dazzling, but it carries scars no calculator can measure. Her Malibu mansion, perched above the Pacific like a fortress of permanence, is often photographed as the crown jewel of her wealth. Bronze doors, marble floors, ceilings so high they seem to touch the sky. It has been valued at as much as $85 million 0 cents. For Cher, though, it is more than an estate. It is the opposite of her childhood. She was once a little girl left at an orphanage, clutching broken shoes held together by rubber band. That girl grew into a woman who built walls so strong, no storm, financial, emotional, or physical, could tear them down. The mansion is less about showing power and more about proving to herself that she finally belonged somewhere, that she could root herself after years of drifting. The cars in her garage tell their own story. The Rolls-Royce, the Porsche 911, the Cadillac Escalade. Each vehicle is not just luxury, but memory. The pink Mustang she once shared with Sonny Bono still carries the laughter of two young dreamers who believed the world would listen. The Rolls-Royce carried her through heartbreaks and comebacks. The Escalade became the quiet chariot for late-night drives home after shows that nearly broke her body. Every machine gleaming in her collection is a reminder of miles traveled between despair and rebirth. And yet, if you strip away the mansions, the cars, the millions, Cher's true empire is built somewhere else. It lives in the songs that outlast generations. It lives in the resilience she modeled for those who felt broken and invisible. It lives in the way she showed the world, again and again, that endings can be rewritten. When she sang "I Got You Babe" with Sonny, she wasn't just launching a career. She was telling a world that had ignored her that she was finally seen. When she sang "If I Could Turn Back Time," it wasn't just a chart hit. It was the anthem of a woman who had walked through divorce, bankruptcy, and humiliation, daring to laugh at the past while still demanding a future. And when she released "Believe" at 52, critics called it desperation. Instead, it became one of the best-selling singles of all time, rewriting pop music and proving that reinvention was not just possible, it was survival made into art. Her empire is also written in her roles on screen. In Silkwood, she shed the sequins and proved she was more than a novelty act. In Moonstruck, she won an Oscar. Not because she played a goddess, but because she played an ordinary woman with extraordinary truth. Those roles gave her money, yes, but more importantly, they gave her permanence in an industry that had tried to erase her again and again. In truth, it has tried to erase her again and again. But perhaps the most meaningful part of her empire lies in something quieter. Her willingness to stand as she is, flawed, scarred, human, and keep going. She has admitted her mistakes as a mother, her fears in love, her battles with illness. She has told the truth even when it was not flattering. That honesty gave her something money could never buy: trust. Fans did not just watch her, they believed her, because she dared to be both larger than life and painfully human at the same time. Her meaning also lives in the causes she has chosen to champion. Her support for the LGBTQ+ community is not decoration, it is lived truth. She walked beside her son Chaz through one of the most public gender transitions of modern times, stumbling at first, then learning, then standing proudly in defense. In doing so, she showed parents everywhere that love can grow, that acceptance is a choice stronger than fear. Even her act of selling 120 of her beloved guitars in 2019 to raise more than $21 million 0 cents for climate charity was not about money. It was about legacy. "My guitars served me well," she said, "but it's time for them to serve the planet." It was the voice of a woman who knew that wealth is not just for keeping, it is for giving. Today, as she nears 80, Cher's empire looks both dazzling and fragile. The mansions stand, the fortune grows, the music continues to stream across the world, but she herself lives more quietly. She meditates, writes in journals, tends to her health, and sits on her Malibu balcony watching the Pacific bleed into twilight. Sometimes she laughs with her much younger partner Alexander Edwards, defying the world's judgments once again by daring to love on her own terms. Sometimes she reflects on her mother's face in the mirror, admitting that she sees not just beauty but survival staring back. The empire she leaves is measured in numbers. Millions of albums sold, millions in tours, hundreds of millions in fortune. But the meaning she leaves cannot be tallied. It lives in the courage of people who listen to her songs while fighting their own battles. It lives in the resilience of those who thought they were finished, until they remembered how many times Cher rose again. It lives in the quiet truth that you can be broken, abandoned, doubted, and dismissed, and still build a life no one can take away. When the lights one day finally fade, when her voice quiets, and her fortune is divided, what remains will not only be the Malibu estate, or the Rolls-Royce, or the Oscar. It will be the example she set. That reinvention is possible at any age. That survival is not shameful but glorious. That love, even imperfect love, is worth fighting for. That is the true empire Cher leaves behind. Not just wealth, not just legacy, meaning.